everyone, welcome to Studio Classroom on the Air. This is the place to come when you want to have some fun. My name is Rebecca. Now, exploring different cultures can be rather exciting. There are so many things to learn about a place, including the proper etiquette when eating and paying, that is, when you eat at a restaurant. At home, that is your home country, it may not even cross your mind that some people don't use credit cards or share their dinner with the whole table. You know, some restaurants around the world only use cash, and for some people, sharing a plate while eating out is actually very normal. Well, today's lesson is called Cultural Differences of Eating Out. Now, here are a few phrases that we are going to talk about throughout today's lesson, and the first is take out. What does it mean if you say, today I want to order takeout? We'll talk about it later. And the other phrase is to go Dutch. Okay, friends, I know you have your magazines. Make sure they're open, and let's get started. Follow me.
Cultural differences of eating out. Another interesting aspect of eating out is the way food is served. Back home in America, each diner orders their own meal. When people eat out in Asia, they usually order food to share. Sometimes one member of the party does the majority of the ordering for everyone. Nearly every time I eat out with friends in Taipei, each of us has our own bowl of rice or noodles, and we share the rest of the dishes. This is an excellent way to try new foods.
Well, we get to continue talking about food today. I'm very excited because I like talking about food. Well, our lesson says another interesting aspect of eating out is the way food is served. There are a few things that we need to talk about, starting with the phrase eating out or to eat out. That just means that you go to a restaurant and you sit down and you enjoy a meal.
And of course, that's what our lesson's all about. So we really wanted to talk about a related phrase, and that is to take out. So when you're eating out at a restaurant, perhaps you order something, but you don't necessarily eat at the place. Can you tell us a little more about the phrase take out?
Yes. So the idea with this phrase take out is that you order food at a restaurant, but then you don't actually sit down to eat there. So maybe you go to McDonald's and you go through the drive-thru and you order your food and then you take your food to the park or you take your food home. And look at this. We have a pizza here. I decided to order a pizza and take it out and eat it here in the studio.
All right, ordering it take out, or sometimes we say ordering it take away, or getting something to go. These are all related phrases. And if I don't want to eat out, but I like the food at that restaurant, of course, I will order it to go and take it out to eat. So back home in America, each diner orders their own meal. Now, diner could mean a type of restaurant. There's a certain kind of restaurant called a diner. But in our lesson, the word diner is referring to the person who dines or eats. That is you and me, you and I.
That's right. So, back in America, each diner does usually order their own meal. So it's like Gabe would have his own plate of food, I would have my own plate of food, and whoever else was at the table would have their own dish or plate of food.
Okay, but our lesson says when people eat out in Asia, they usually order food to share, like at a 圆桌, the round tables, right? And you get 空心菜 and but that's my favorite. That's the only thing that comes to mind right now. But all those different types of dishes that you order to share. And what's really funny, our boss, Doris, has been in Taiwan for such a long time that even when we go to a Western restaurant like Fridays, she'll order food to have it shared with everybody. So we'll get burgers, which usually you eat a burger by yourself, right? She'll cut it into halves or maybe even 4 parts. And the pasta everybody will have to share everything. Because she's been here for such a long time, She's just gotten used to that style.
You know, Gabe, I actually do feel that Taiwanese food or Chinese food is a little bit easier to share than Western food.
Yeah.
It's not as easy to share a hamburger with 6 or 7 different people. But if you order a dish of, that really good beef or really good chicken, everyone just kind of takes a piece with their chopsticks. No problem.
It's true. And there are some dishes that are easier to share, like a salad or a pasta or something like that. But I just thought that was amusing. But we continue on here. Nearly every time I eat out with friends in Taipei, each of us has our own bowl of rice or noodles, and we share the rest of the dishes. Speaking of which, Rebecca...
Well, you know something, Gabe? Yes. Something that I thought was really interesting. I just want to back up just a minute and talk about this word party that appears in our lesson.
Oh.
Because our lesson says sometimes one member of the party does the majority of the ordering for everyone.
Oh.
And I just wanted to mention to you, that's actually something that I really had to get used to living in Taiwan. Whenever I would go out or eat out with friends, usually one person in our party would do all the ordering.
Now, are you talking about having a big party? Is that what you mean by the word party?
That's a great question, but no, of course not. What is a party? Well, you use this word to describe a group of people who are involved in an activity together. So if you go to a restaurant, you have a party of 5. There's 5 of you in your group.
That's right. And so the host might say, okay, she might look at the reservation list, and you already made a reservation, so you could say, Harbor, party of 5, this way, here is your table. Okay, or they might ask, how many are in your party? That means how many are in your group.
Exactly. Okay, so back to this idea of how each person usually has their own bowl of rice or noodles. And then, of course, when you go out, there's usually a bunch of other dishes that everyone shares.
Exactly. So, Rebecca, I have this soup right here with a chicken head.
Ooh.
I would like to share it with you.
Thank you, but I don't eat chicken head, thank you.
Right. Well, you can't say that I didn't offer it to you. It was a nice gesture. But we see here, this is an excellent way to try new foods, and that is by sharing foods. Well, we want to learn about something new, something about the food chain in the Info Cloud.
Hello, friends. Welcome to InfoCloud. Ever since I got to start teaching on InfoCloud, I've had an opportunity to get to know Rex a little better. I heard you were raised in a pretty wealthy family.
Yeah, I enjoyed a comfortable life as a child, but as I grew up and now have my own family, I haven't always been as fortunate. I was at the bottom of the food chain when I started working.
That's a really interesting expression. When a species is at the bottom of the food chain, it means you could get eaten alive by most of the other animals above you.
When we say a human being is at the bottom of the food chain, we don't mean they get eaten literally, but they are at a very low position or status. Almost anyone could boss them around and tell them what to do.
Fortunately, we don't always stay at the bottom. If we work hard, we could become successful and rise to the top of the food chain.
When someone is at the top of the food chain, that means they are in a very important and influential position. In other words, they are very powerful, and many people listen to them.
For example, we can say that a CEO is at the top of the food chain. Many investors and employers depend on him and his leadership.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Studio Classroom, where we are talking about cultural differences when eating out. Now, we already learned that it's quite normal in America for most people in the same party to order their own dishes. However, in Asia, it's also very normal for one person to order lots of different dishes, and then everybody shares those dishes. But what about paying for food at a restaurant? Well, let's learn about that now.
Cultural differences of eating out. One thing that strikes me as odd is the way people pay for food at a restaurant. In the U.S., we often ask for separate checks so we each pay for our own meal. But here, if diners decide to pay separately, they typically don't request separate checks. Instead, they give money to one person who pays the bill. People also don't tip the server. Instead, there is often a service charge added to the bill. I hope you are doing well. I'll write you again. Love, Margaret.
Well, in this next section, we are going to talk about how people pay for food at a restaurant. We read, one thing that strikes me as odd is the way people pay for food at a restaurant. Before we continue with this idea, let's talk about this word odd and a similar word, the word peculiar. If something is odd, that means it's strange or perhaps a little unexpected.
Yeah, well, the word peculiar is kind of similar, right? I think these are just different synonyms for the word strange. It actually reminds me of when I was first teaching on the Let's Talk in English show many years ago. One of our coworkers said to me, Gabe, I was watching the show this morning, and when you were describing the word strange, you said strange, strange. Strange simply means peculiar. So I had used a more difficult word to describe the word strange.
Now, that is a little bit odd.
That's odd.
That's a little odd if you use a more difficult word to try to define an easier word. But sometimes it's easy to do that, so we have to be careful. Isn't that right?
Exactly. So friends, maybe you can think of some other synonyms for the words odd, strange, or peculiar. One thing struck our author, or this person, Margaret, as peculiar or odd, and that's the way that people pay for food at a restaurant. In the U.S., we often ask for separate checks, so we each pay for our own meal.
So that is exactly right. We often do pay for our own meal. Now, it is the norm. It is normal for us to ask for separate checks. But sometimes you might go to a restaurant and they say that no separate checks are allowed. And so then you just kind of have to pay one person, or one person pays for it all and then you pay that person.
Yeah. And so, look out for those kinds of signs, right? No separate checks. But if you are paying for your own meal, couldn't we say that you're going to go Dutch?
Yes. I like that phrase and we want to talk about it. That just means that each person pays for their meal separately. Now, I think this is especially important when a guy and a girl are having dinner together, perhaps. Because sometimes in America, if a guy and a girl go together, people assume the guy is taking the girl on a date and he's going to pay. But if you say, oh, tonight we're going to go Dutch, that means it's not a date. We're paying for our meals separately.
And so communication really is key in a situation like that. Okay, you want to talk about it beforehand. Otherwise, it might be awkward around the time where you're trying to pay the check. And then the girl's not sure if she's supposed to pay or if she's expecting the guy to pay, but he wants them to go Dutch. So you might just say something like, hey, tonight, let's go Dutch. Or if you're the lady, maybe you could ease his nerves by offering or suggesting, let's go Dutch, and see what he says. Perhaps he'll insist to pay, but at least you offered. Someone might say, who paid? You could say, we went Dutch, okay? And Rebecca, what do you think about the first date with somebody? Do you think that they should go Dutch, or do you think it's better for the guy to pay?
Well, if it's a date, and it's clearly a date, I do think that the guy should pay. I think that's just the proper way, at least the way we do things in the States.
Okay, so yeah, there are some different cultural differences that have to do with more than just eating out, right? But going Dutch and who's paying. But here, if diners decide to pay separately, we're talking about in Asia, they typically don't request separate checks. Instead, they give money to one person who pays the bill.
That's right. And of course, people also don't tip the server. Instead, there's often a service charge added to the bill. Well, I hope you are doing well. I'll write again soon. Love, Margaret. Well, right now it is time for us to review today's lesson with a
Review skit.
What are you doing, Margaret?
I'm writing to my grandparents.
Oh, great. Tell them what it's like being an exchange student here.
Okay. I'm enjoying my time in Taipei very much.
Oh, tell them you've made new friends, local friends like me.
Okay. What else?
Tell them some cultural differences you've encountered.
Okay, but where do I begin?
Talk about food. That's a topic everyone loves.
True. There are obvious differences when eating out.
So, what have you noticed?
Well, food portions in American restaurants are usually larger than here.
Larger? Really?
Yes, and sometimes you have options to supersize your servings.
Oh, supersize. Wow. Portions here are not overwhelmingly large. We just eat until we're full.
People here eat out a lot. There are all kinds of restaurants, food stands and food carts, and even eating on the sidewalk.
Yes, lots of variety.
Yes, another interesting aspect of eating out is the way the food is ordered.
What do you mean?
In America, each diner usually orders their own meal.
Oh, here, sometimes one person orders the majority of food and everyone shares.
Right. We each have our own bowl of rice or noodles, but share the rest. It's an excellent way to try new foods.
That's true.
But one thing that strikes me as odd is the way people pay.
We just give our money to one person who pays the bill.
In the U.S., we ask for separate checks if we want to pay separately. And here, you don't tip the server.
But often a service charge is added to the bill.
Right. I'll write again soon. Love, Margaret.
Wait. I have a lot of other ideas you can write about.
Save them for next time. Let's eat.
So just to review, when you eat out, that means that you go to a restaurant and you actually sit down at the restaurant to enjoy a meal. Now, when you take out, you order your food at a restaurant of some sort, but you don't actually sit down at the restaurant to eat. You go somewhere else. And the phrase to go Dutch means that you and your friends, when you eat out together, you pay for your own meal. Well, friends, it's been fun talking about the cultural differences when eating out, and we look forward to seeing you next time right here on Studio Classroom.